We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a discussion of Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruocchio. This is the first book in the Sun Eater series. Now, I should say from the very beginning, we're going to start with no spoilers for Empire of Silence. So please don't give away any spoilers in the chat while we're doing the non-spoiler part, which shouldn't be too long. And then we will move on to spoilers for Empire of Silence only, because I have only read Empire of Silence. The rest of my guests, however, have read the entire series. And yeah, we have a comment already here, and I was going to acknowledge that. But thank you for bringing it. It is a very sad day for all of us. Hyperion was a instrumental read for me many years ago, and it is very sad that we lost Dan Simmons today, for sure. Yeah, we'll thank you for that acknowledgement, and we certainly do want to acknowledge that's a huge loss for the fantasy science fiction community, for sure. Yeah, so moving on, though, I'm going to ask my guests to give their non-spoiler assessment of the series as a whole, because all four of them have read the whole of Sun Eater, and also their assessment of Empire of Silence as the beginning of the series. And then I'll talk about my experience in a non-spoiler way, and then we will dive into the spoilers for Empire of Silence. So my first guest here is Janny Wurts, the author, the painter, the woman of all trades, the amazing Janny Wurts. So Janny, thank you first of all for being here. I really appreciate your wisdom and your insights always, but I'm excited because this is a series that I think you've enjoyed very much. I've heard you praise it before.
Oh, definitely. I love things that spread very wide and deep, and I love things that circle back over themselves and change your opinion of what you saw before. And I love things that challenge my thinking. And this series did all of that. Christopher Ruocchio started out with, I think, a very, very ambitious plan, and I think he lived up to it. Whatever you think of the strengths and drawbacks, I really think he set out to do a thing with this series, and I really think he stuck it. He nailed it.
All right. And so Empire Silence then, as a beginning, any thoughts on that, non-spoiler?
Well, you can't spoil this book because he goes right up front and tells you what the shape of history is going to be. The nuance is that the perspective from which you're seeing it shifts and changes. And that's one of my favorite things about a really deeply well done book, is that what you start out thinking is true isn't necessarily true. Okay. And what is told to you that this is history, and we all know history is altered and written by the people who come after, or written by the victor, or written by the popular opinion. And the nuance behind that mass opinion is quite different when you start pulling it apart. So it's really a series that pulls that all apart. But not only that, he takes all the fun, cool stuff from every book you ever read, every movie you ever saw, every bit of TV you ever saw, every piece of history you ever saw, every historical film or book, and wraps it all up and makes alterations that are like, well, that's what I wish happened. And he has a knack for that. Yeah. And then the silly cross things that he switches up, where you'll encounter something familiar, only he's bent it just a little bit or stood it on its head. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not copying this culture. That's taking this culture and evolving it over history where they misinterpret. Like his quote from one of the characters in this, a mythical character in a story says, "He who does not live by the sword is destined to die by the sword." Now, I'm not quoting it perfectly, but that's upside down. You always see that in its other context, and you're going, whoa, wait a minute. This is turned on its head, and he does that over and over and over again. Or he borrows a name from something from Lord of the Rings, and you go, what's that doing here? And yet, there it is.
Yeah.
So he has his own internal system here where, like Gene Wolfe, he scrambles up the perspective. So you kind of recognize, but it's not quite this world. It's not quite the history that we know, but he's extrapolated on top of what we know in very profound directions. Eugenics, and, he takes big, big themes and pushes them thousands of years into the future.
Oh, it's all your fault, Dr. Jason.
Brian is blaming me for putting down Trader's Knot, Janny.
You're welcome to be absent for that. I'll egg you on.
All right, Dylan. My next guest is Dylan from Spaced Out Reads. Now, Dylan is instrumental in giving. I was always going to read this series, but Dylan was instrumental in giving me that push to say, "It's time. Let's get going here." So when Dylan was my guest on Dear Dr. Fantasy, he did a fantastic job of getting me excited to read Sun Eater. So Dylan, give us your assessment of the series as a whole, and then Empire of Silence specifically as the beginning point.
Well, thank you for having me on, Philip. I have been doing my best to forget about the entirety of the series, so I don't talk about it today.
Okay.
But Janny's rejigged it for me. So for me, I like to think of Sun Eater as a gateway into wider and deeper books, as Janny would put it. It's a series that gives you everything. It takes sci-fi, it takes space opera, the drama that we get from fantasy in space, gives it in a very digestible format, and just takes you through a journey of the ages and takes you through everything. Takes you from just someone that is young and privileged on page one, or, well, he's telling us back 1,000 years beforehand, but young and privileged on page one to how he turns into this hero and a monster. So just an incredible journey through so much.
Oh, awesome. All right. And were you immediately hooked when you read Empire Silence? What were you? If you can go back to the first time around, I guess.
Yeah, I rewatched my review of it this morning so I could remember. And yeah, I was pretty hooked in. The writing, just how grand the whole world feels. You can just picture Hadrian on his homeworld in the first one, and just that image stuck with me from the early chapters, and only got better from there.
It is a fantastic opening. I mean,
Mm-hmm. That's everything you wish that Dune was and wasn't.
It is a fantastic opening. That opening line it has to go down as one of the best opening lines I've come across for sure. So, all right. Well, how about you, Jacob? What's your assessment? You recently finished this series, so you have fresh thoughts for us on the series as a whole. Non-spoiler, of course, but also your thoughts on Empire of Silence when you're done with that.
Yeah, so my favorite thing that happened in the final book, no, I'm kidding. I finished the series 4 days ago, something like that. And it really just, I feel so humbled reading it in a way, because it feels like Janny mentioned, there's so many references in there that I know that I'm missing because I'm younger and have not experienced so many different chapters of life yet, and somehow Christopher is able to embody those chapters so well, but also has so many references in there that I don't quite get. And I know it's a series that I'm going to reread later, but I know that when I'm reading it now, even missing those contexts, that this is a series that I feel is operating, transcending its own genre. That to say that Sun Eater is just operating within the realm of sci-fi feels like you're selling it extremely short. There's so much going on in this series of different groups and their own objectives and their own beliefs that they think are true, and everyone feels validated by what they think is the correct direction for their own future. And it just creates so many interesting perspectives and shifts in values for different characters. So really think it'll be a series that's talked about for many, many, many years to come, maybe long after we're gone. But Empire of Silence, I actually got to the end of and thought, this was fun. This was good. And as I progressed through the series, I looked back on Empire of Silence and felt more like, oh, wow, this is setting up so much more than I think I could give it credit for at the time. And now, as I've moved throughout more of the series, I could look back at Empire of Silence and almost like you do as you progress through Lord of the Rings, just you almost miss the days in the Shire, like the good old days. And there's just, man, there's so many things that I wish I could talk about, but we're not in spoiler section yet. But Empire of Silence is just such a strong opening to a series.
I'm not sure Delos is exactly the Shire, but yeah, I get what you're
No. Again, perspective though. Compared to things later.
definitely not Imesh. But,
No, not that either.
but no, I get what you're saying. That's awesome. It sounds like such a huge experience for you, Jacob, and I'm thrilled for you that you've experienced this. And I'm looking ahead and thinking, wow, I've got quite a ride ahead of me, don't I? So, John, what are your thoughts, my friend, on this series as a whole and Empire of Silence?
It's so awesome to hear Jacob, because other than like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, this is like one of the few series he's got to the end of. You know, so it's so cool.
I've actually not gotten to the end of Lord of the Rings.
I was trying not to put that out there, but okay. You just outed yourself. I spent a lot of today, and I heard about Dan Simmons earlier, and I was so looking forward to this evening. And then I heard about that, and I don't think these two should be compared. But it made me remember when I first picked up Hyperion, and I had feelings of, oh, this is not what I thought this was going to be. This could be special. And I had some of the same inklings with Empire of Silence. Not entirely, but I did have a feeling like this is not what I expected. This is much vaster. This is much grander. The scope is much further, more sweeping. He's making me, the one thing I truly remember about when I first picked up this book was the envy, the absolute envy, because he wrote this at 18, 19, and I was on an artist journey at 18 or 19, and all I cared about was getting my skin to clear up by opening night. And this guy put this together at 18, 19, and he looks at all of story and narrative and how it defines us and how it makes us see our world and how it makes us see ourselves in the world. It was maddening in a way. And then when I got through the whole series, then I did realize it's like, yes, this is a landmark series. This is going to be something that is looked back on, because you not only have all the ideas and the concepts and the philosophy, but you also have the character arcs. You also have the character journeys. You also have the feelings that sustain you on an emotional roller coaster that keep you turning the page far beyond the ideas and the concepts. And he's able to write so far. He wrapped the series at 33. And because of the way this timeline is, and we have an elongated human experience with Hadrian that we're following, he's able to write so far beyond his years into experiences that I, as an older person, am able to look at and appreciate and go, oh, yes, those feelings. I absolutely can connect with those. And somehow he's just tapped into the human experience and where we all come from in our story and our history, and just put it out there for us. And landmark series, envy. There you
John,
go.
Isn't it amazing that Jacob encountered this series at the beginning of his reading experience, relatively speaking,
Sure.
and you and I are long, and Philip too long. We've read a lot of books. You don't expect to see a book that shatters the glass
No.
at this age. You're not jaded, but you're just looking for that something, and very few books can meet that mark, and this one did.
You're always looking for it. And like you say, shatter the glass. Like, it is the glass. It's the same screen I look at for stories. But it somehow warped it. It somehow changed it. It somehow gave me a different view from what I was expecting when I opened the covers. So, I mean, fair play, man. Kudos to Christopher Ruocchio.
Yep, he was allowed to write with that scope, and he took the torch and he ran with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow,
You don't always get that chance.
Yes, absolutely. And he had to fight for that chance.
Well,
like
yeah.
several different publishers, several
Yeah.
different, yeah. So
History
yeah,
of Malazan, a lot of those, same thing. Same thing. You want to break the glass with that kind of scope, you do have to fight for it.
Well,
Yeah.
So more
you
power
would
to him.
know at Wars in Light and Shadow.
absolutely, Janny, you would absolutely.
Yeah, but
know
we're
it.
talking about this book today. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, he took that torch and he ran with it and he fought for it. And I'm just delighted that he landed it, and it's hitting the way it's hitting right from day one.
Yeah.
When he finished that final book, he fought that war, but that moment came for him in the final hour, and he grabbed it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I feel like that's a tough act to follow. You four have been through the whole journey, and I feel the love and the enthusiasm for this series. And here I just finished the first book, and I feel like, wow, I have a long way to go here. But I will say, I really enjoyed my time tremendously. I mention from the beginning that I listened to the audiobook narrated by Samuel Ruocchio. Is that how you say his name?
Rukin, yeah, he's fantastic.
He is fantastic. He is for me now the voice of Hadrian, absolutely, because this is a first-person narration. Just a brilliant job. I highly recommend the audiobook if you're a fan of that sort of thing. Just a really wonderful experience. And this is a part of my audiobook journey. This is the first time I'm trying a relatively complex series on audiobook, and I'm so pleased.
Paperbook.
So I have the paperback as well, but I am so pleased that this works so well for me, and I think it's a tribute to Christopher Ruocchio's writing as well, that it hit that sweet spot for me. There are a few authors who do this where I'm turning the pages, I'm really invested in the story, but I'm also challenged by the ideas. And this was this book really, and to say this guy was 18 when he started this. I thought he was like in his early 50s, but that's insane. That's insane.
When he started the story idea, I believe he was in the neighborhood of 9 or 10, maybe younger.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, anyway, he was young when he wrote this.
Yeah.
And, that's amazing to me. Now,
okay, put him on the same page with Mozart,
Yeah, there we go. There were certain influences that were very obvious to me.
Yes.
Dune being one, and the Book of the New Sun being another. And there's a lot of heavy influence from those, especially. There may be some others in there we could.
You're gonna hit a mountain of them.
Okay. Yeah. Which I think it's normal for a writer with especially their first book to have to wear their influences on their sleeve to a degree. Yeah. So that is absolutely something that I expected based on things I had heard as well.
But he didn't copy it. He took the concept and he went.
I mean, this is going to be heresy probably to many a fan of Gene Wolfe. I know that Sam is in the chat. I think. Sorry, Sam, but I actually there he is. There's Sam right there. Whoops, nope. There you are, Sam. So I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed Book of the New Sun, to be quite honest with you. I like Hadrian a lot more than I like Severian as a first-person narrator, even though I recognize that without Severian, probably there would not be a Hadrian, probably.
I completely agree with that, yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Book of the New Sun and Dune are written very male, dry, lack of emotion.
Right.
It sucked. This is not that.
Yeah.
He wrote the same concepts with his own spin, but he put the full emotional range that you would get in a Robin Hobb.
Yeah.
So you feel everything the character is going through, whereas Severian is just kind of telling you, and it's very, very, very dry.
Yeah. Yeah. I got no feels from Severian at all. And this is emotional. Some people would say to its own detriment, because it is so operatic, melodramatic at times. Hadrian is, I mean, the man wears capes. I mean, he's quite the sweeping, melodramatic soul,
So yeah, he was, for a male writer to be that fearless, to write that depth of emotion into his character, it's a landmark. Because he took the best of all of that and snowballed it up and boom, let it roll down the hill and gather speed.
So for Chris, I am going to be reading Earth of the New Sun very soon. So I may have a different opinion of Severian after I read that. I've only read Book of the New Sun once through the whole thing. The first two books I actually read twice, but yeah, I'll be reading Earth, the New Sun soon. So we'll see if that changes. But I actually agree with Janny Wurts here in that I felt this was both the intellectual experience that I got from Book of the New Sun and Dune. And by the way, those books are so original. Let's not underrate them.
No.
So original.
Both landmarks as well.
Landmark. But this was a more emotional experience for me than either of them. I felt more connected to the characters in Empire of Silence than I did in the either Book of the New Sun or Dune, and I love them. I mean, there are so many things I love. I could praise those books to the end of my days as well, but I was really here we go. I knew Sam would have a reaction there.
You know it. You know it.
He didn't murder the woman he loved. Come on.
Okay, but here he's being fair. Here he's being fair. Okay, that's a good way to put it. That's a very good
I like
way.
that. That is true.
And Jake is agreeing as well. I think that's a good way to put it. But yes, for me, this was a fantastic start. I actually loved this more than I thought I would.
Really?
I did. I was coming into it with a little bit of, okay, I've heard there's a lot of obvious influence from certain books. And
Philip, told you so.
yeah,
I wrote you a private message months ago. I said, this is going to be your jam.
Yep, it is. It's fantastic. And I'm still in disbelief that he was that young. And honestly, when you're younger, it is probably you're less conscious of those influences coming out, you know. And I'm sure that anybody who's written a book will say, that's my experience too, you know, writing my first book. And then some of the influences that are there, I was conscious of, and I was even doing a tip of the hat sort of thing, like Beowulf or Tolkien or that sort of thing. But I didn't even realize until I reread Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn how much of Tad Williams was in my book. You know, it's just sometimes it's conscious.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Here's the thing that got me is like when I read Dune first a long, long time ago, and then I reread it when the first movie came out because I was on a radio talk show to talk about Dune. What Christopher Ruocchio captured here is what I remembered that I thought I loved the most about Dune. But when you go back and relook at Dune, you realize you were younger and you embellished it like freaking crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that has changed since Frank Herbert wrote Dune is there's much more emphasis on characters and emotion and that kind of thing. And that's a part of this. The other thing is the omniscient narrative perspective in Dune. That's just, you know, having the first person narration and that it takes a skillful writer to make it work as well. But I feel like that's a great way as well to get into a character. And Hadrian really just came alive for me on the first few pages of this. It was just tremendous.
Well, I'm so excited you liked it that much, Philip. I really am. I really, really am.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I'm anticipating great things. If this is not even the best book in the series,
No.
I don't get why people say this book is not the best book in the series. To me, it's all of a piece. It worked for me right from the start.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly how I feel too. I when I first read it, I felt like, oh, this is maybe the weakest book in the series. Not to put it down at all, because it's fantastic. But as I got through the series, it felt much more like that. Like, oh, it's one continuous build. It's difficult to say that this is the weakest part of the story because it's so influential to what the story is and what it has to be that you can't discount what had to happen at the beginning.
Right. Now, I do think I appreciate your point, Janny, but also you do get better as a writer as you write more books. I mean, I hope anyway, for my sake, you know, I hope that you improve as a writer with each book. So, but I understand this whole thing is one vision, as it were. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it unfolds. Is there anything else not spoilery that you guys want to share or talk about before we dive into spoilers for Empire of Silence?
I think what's important to think about is what is not on the page. Because you're seeing it so tightly through the character's eyes, but also there's that older character perspective that's woven into it, saying this is what I didn't know at the time, this is what I didn't, but there's things that are also omitted there that, especially for me on a reread of this book, I said, oh, that's interesting. This character dynamic, and we'll discuss it in the spoilers, went over the character's head, both as an older man and as a younger character. And I thought there was a lot between the lines here that was not said to fill the picture out even further.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
Now I want to reread
So
this book.
on many levels, this book has a lot in it that's more than just what the words on the page say when you contemplate what isn't said.
Yeah.
Because the main character is so passionate about what he feels.
Oh, yeah.
and so passionate about the way he looks back on what he felt then. But there's a whole realm that's not mentioned.
Interesting.
It's eclipsed.
Yeah.
Very good. All right.
We'll talk about that in the spoilers, but
I feel like we are about ready to dive into spoilers. So this is a warning for anyone and everyone who has not yet read Empire of Silence. We are not doing spoilers for the series because yours truly has only read book 1. So if you have read the rest of the series, please don't put any spoilers in the chat for anything other than Empire of Silence.
don't read the first paragraph. Don't read the first chapter.
I mean, yeah, it's like right there in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing, that beginning.
It's
But
in
yeah,
the name of the series.
we're gonna die. I mean, it is called Sun Eater for a reason.
Yeah.
But that's one of the best things about it. It isn't about what happens. It's how
It's
it
how.
happens.
The journey.
That's
It's
it.
how it
That's the
happens.
whole thing. Yes. Yes.
And that's what, to me, makes some of the best books, the most memorable books for me, are the ones that it isn't what happens, because those you finish them and you're done. But the how it happens keeps turning over in your head.
There's a spoiler.
yeah.
How could you, Shay? How could you?
I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, you've seen the movies. Stop it.
All right, so we are going into the spoilers now for everybody, and I'll just say from the very beginning, what a voice! What an amazing narrative voice, right from the beginning. You feel the age of this character and what he's been through right from the opening. I mean, the light that of that murdered sun still burns me. I see it through my eyelids, blazing out of history from that bloody day, hinting at fires indescribable, and on. It's a gorgeous paragraph.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I read that paragraph and I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna like this. But I'd like to start with that point of Hadrian as the narrator, and your thoughts on him as a narrator, what that adds to this book, because he is describing himself as a youth, as a very young person in retrospect, but that older voice just bleeds out sometimes very explicitly at times, letting you know things that in advance, and you're like, dude, you just told me what's going to happen, and I don't care because I'm so in for this ride. But any thoughts from you guys on that device and how it's executed, but just Hadrian as a narrator? Well, anyone wants to jump in, go for it.
Okay, I'll
You're
go.
absolute. Oh, that's all
Yeah,
right.
go ahead, Jenny.
Go,
No.
John, go, John,
I'd
go,
way
John.
rather
John,
hear you.
I've been talking too much. You go.
And I would way rather hear. I was just gonna. All I was gonna say is I agree with Janny. The narrative voice, the authorial voice, is this amazing two-pronged attack, to where it's a slipstream between the two, where you get this young idealist that wants to break away from his familial trappings in this galactic empire and bring about peace and make a change and leave a mark. And then you have these moments of a much older, grizzled. And the beautiful thing about this is as you go through the series, Dr. Chase, you'll find that he's already this long-lived individual, because he's been, through eugenics, basically perfectly manufactured to be one of the ruling class. Right. And at the same time, because of faster-than-light travel that he's going to go through, it's even expanded longer. So we have this human experience that is drawn out over so many years. So you're looking back from the far side, and you're looking back to this other extreme of when a young man didn't realize the weight that the galactic empire would put on him, the weight of responsibility, the weight of becoming legend and carrying that, and how that would change him and what he would have to do to encompass that. So you have these two narrative voices, and at the age of 18, 19, he has them both down to such a beautiful, beautiful ringing truth. I really love the narrative voice in that. It's that two-pronged attack that was so beautifully pointed out by Janny.
He's a very powerful individual voice, both as an old man looking back and as a young kid going forward. And that we are individuals. We do process what we encounter through our own lens. And he captures that very perfectly. And the point I wanted to make about the things that are not said, when I read the opening of this and the dynamic between the two brothers and the things that you discover as you read forward over the pages up to the point where he has the hit fight, they have a slugfest with the brother.
Adrian and Kristen.
You find out that the father was playing them both off against each other.
Absolutely.
They were being played.
Mm-hmm.
To either bring out the best or the worst in each other. So the father was really a creepy kind of person. But I didn't feel that the Hadrian character, young or old, really got that.
Mm-mm.
He still had the blinders on of being the emotionally hurt child, even as the old man. He never saw that the father was playing the two off against each other. And yet it hits you in the face. It's like, man, what a cold-blooded bastard his dad was. And
the mother was a piece of work as well. Luckily he had Tor Gibson as that mentor father figure, to slide in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to actually come back to Tor Gibson as well, but I want to first get Dylan's thoughts and Jacob's thoughts on Hadrian as a narrator. If you guys don't mind sharing your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like with a story where we already get told the ending right on page one, it instantly becomes the character journey is a huge part, and with how good Christopher can make Hadrian and show who he becomes, it gives us the buy-in. Even though we know what's happening, it makes us interested in the journey of how does he change his beliefs throughout these things. How does he become the person that becomes the monster or the hero?
Yep.
It also is a great way for the author, for Christopher, to tell us what he's going to be telling us in the series, because from page one he's telling us this is a series about perceptions and how legends go through time, how the narrative for your story and everyone else's story is just told, and how you're perceived. So you get to see Hadrian through all these chunks of life and how other people react to him. And they're like, oh, you're that guy. No, you're that guy. I really like that part of the aspect of the whole Sun Eater story.
The fact he breaks the glass and tells you how what the ending is, you're not reading it to know what happens anymore. You're more focused on how it happens. And the kind of book that does that, often, if you don't know what happens at the end, it obscures it. And it takes a very patient, very careful reader to pick everything up because they're too busy reading to see what happens next. So by diffusing that was a work of genius. It was a stroke of genius right there. And when not one would have occurred to me.
Not easy to pull off either.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel like a big, absolutely. I feel like a big reason that you feel so excited to continue reading the series is not because, I need to know what happens next, but because I need to know who Hadrian becomes next. I mean, a lot of the first book, there's moments where older Hadrian is talking about how much of an idiot he was when he was a kid, and I'm sure everybody relates to that to some capacity. And to me, that's so much of what I loved about the series, is that there's the aspect of what does this weight of the responsibility of all the systems of the empire on your shoulders do to you as a person to make someone feel so jaded that you would do this atrocity that we know happens at the end of the series, but also what journey specifically does Hadrian go on? How many different people does he have to become to reach that finish line? And to me, that was some of the parts where the series was at its best for me. And there's even so many different pieces of who Hadrian was as a person in Empire of Silence. There are phases of growth in him that are, I don't know, there's maybe you could argue there's 4 or 5 different Hadrians within Empire of Silence because of all the different crazy things that happened to him.
Well, I imagine
just changed his perspective on life.
He's got 1,000 years to cover here, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that was brilliantly handled is any of you who have been parents know that out of the mouths of children, sometimes you hear great wisdom. He managed to capture the individual of Hadrian, where even as a young person, he had huge moments of maturity.
Yes.
And huge moments of immaturity. And as he ages going forward, he has huge moments of immaturity, just like that child. That child comes back out of the box.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And huge moments of immense maturity. So I love that mix and match because we're not clearly delineated. We don't just grow up and suddenly become adults all the time. We screw up and we end up, something comes out of your mouth and it could be your 3-year-old speaking. And Christopher captured that incredibly well.
Yeah.
So Mick Scarfield brought up the birth vats, and it's fair to say that Hadrian did not grow up in an entirely loving home with attentive parents. Alistair is, as I think it was Sam who pointed out, that Alistair is a bit of a devil himself. That's the sigil for House Marlowe.
But why? Why is that the sigil? Why is it? Because they're descended from Christopher Marlowe. Like that's how much intertwined
author of Dr. Faust.
narrative and story is to this entire thing.
Yeah.
And his father's a sociopath. I mean, the kid was basically raised by a sociopath.
Absolutely.
And his mother, Lady Liliana, is neglectful as well. I think that's fair. Although she does help him out there when he's trying to run away from what his father has planned for him. But for the most part, he's not feeling a ton of love. But there's Tor Gibson. We mentioned Tor Gibson earlier, who plays very much a parental role for him. And he is a scholiast, which is a lot like a mentat. But again, I feel like Christopher Ruocchio took something and then improved on it here by giving us the scholiast, which is, yes, it does resemble a mentat. It also resembles in many ways the relationship between Severian and Malrubius in Book of the New Sun. There's some interesting parallels there as well. But once again, this is a much more emotional, much more interesting relationship, in my opinion, what you have here between Hadrian and Tor Gibson. So let's, I'm going to open it up to you guys now. Talk about what happens on Delos, primarily Hadrian's family life. You can bring in Crispin too if you want. Your
Jacob will.
On Dort. Are you a Crispin fan, Jacob?
I love Crispin.
Oh,
Crispin.
Crispin.
Jacob is that Crispin's greater than Hadrian camp.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Read The Lesser Devil, Philip. You'll get it.
Oh, okay. I have to read on.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone
Hadrian's
want to
too
jump in?
harsh
Go
on
ahead, Dylan.
Crispin.
Are you a Crispin fan too, Dylan?
Yeah, Crispin goes out and makes the effort in Empire of Silence to talk to his brother, to communicate with him. And Hadrian just has this belief that Crispin is the enemy. He's just a 15-year-old kid.
Huh.
Yeah, he's not done.
Fan.
He's not done.
Okay.
He's not done. Yeah. But I mean, even Crispin's just a lot more self-aware, I think, of his own growth curve, and I think he gets there. He reaches the level of empathy a little quicker than Hadrian does for me.
For you mean you empathize with Crispin more than Hadrian?
I think Crispin is a more empathetic person than Hadrian is.
You got to look past him of spilling all the food all the time.
Yeah.
I would not want to be the one mopping up after that one.
You're saying that Hadrian is misreading Crispin a lot of the time when he sees this aggressive, when Crispin is trying to say goodbye to Hadrian and they have the big fight afterwards. Crispin came not to piss off his brother, but actually he wanted to show him, hey, I love you.
Oh, come on. The kid had a stone deaf ear talking about the girl and making all these implications, and he's watching his brother get madder and madder. He's got a stone ear for reading the room. Crispin, stone ear for reading the room. That's the way I reacted to that character. It's like,
okay,
not
He's got a
connected
lot of
to
growing to
anybody
do.
else's feelings at any moment at that age. Now, maybe I did not read the short fiction that you did, Jacob. But
He's got a lot of growing to do, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try to wrap my head around the Crispin love here. But maybe I'll get there. Maybe it's the younger people who like Crispin. I don't know. You think that's a reason? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't see you walking around wanting to be a gladiator, Philip.
Me? No.
In your tweed coat. So yeah, I don't think
We need the tweed armor.
I mean, it's pretty effective. It is dragon fire proof, at least. So, all right. Well, anyone who wants to talk about the family dynamic, but Tor Gibson as a father figure, John, go for it.
Okay. Just to touch Delos, so much happens on Delos that I love. We get and here's what I love about this is that again, story is so interwoven into this. We have the cliffs breaking off into the sea. We have so much of this Gothic aesthetic that we start off with in Delos, right? A family that is stemmed from the playwright that was a contemporary of Shakespeare that wrote Dr. Faustus, as you said, Dr. Chasen. And we start with this funeral procession. So right away we're looking at what life means and what life and death means, and how long of a life will these characters get because they're the ruling class, and how a young Hadrian is an idealist that wants to strike out and go against the grain, whereas Crispin might be buying into a little bit of the sociopathic father ideas about growing up to take his place and be a leader. And then the mother is an artist. She writes these operas, right? She's a bit of a hedonist. She's more concerned and self-involved with her own art, sometimes more so than her children. And then we have Tor Gibson filling in the void for those two parents. So you have everything there. You have such family drama. It's almost, in a way, it could be like this gothic, strange Eugene O'Neill play that you have so much family drama. It's so Greek in such a way. I kind of compare Janny's work the same way. It's like there's so much family drama here, and it sets the stage so well that I love what happens on Delos. I love the family dynamic that starts off and starts the ball rolling for so much of what this series is going to be.
Okay. Anyone want to jump on that?
I want to ask a question of some of the readers who've read ahead, but not spoil anything for Philip. We're not going to spoil anything for Philip. What do you think? This is just something to mull over. What do you think Tor Gibson was sharpening the pen for? Because he shaped a lot of what Hadrian becomes.
Yeah.
He was the foundation for a lot of what Hadrian thinks. And in my reread, I'm going to be looking at that because we know later in the series, looking back, but what was Tor Gibson's motivation here? Because he has one. I don't doubt it. This is the ultimate chosen one story in many ways.
Yes, yes.
What was he doing? What was he shaping him for, and did he succeed? So that's going to be a question I'm going to ask this group later when we're looking back.
Right. Yeah, because I actually felt like Hadrian, I'm going to leave aside Crispin for a moment and let Dylan and Jakob defend Crispin more if they wish. But I felt that Hadrian showed the capacity for empathy, which is really quite incredible, given how his father was, given how neglectful his mother was. The only source of real connection in his life was Tor Gibson. Mm-hmm. And he had a capacity for introspection and self-reflection and empathy, I thought. For example, when he it feels romantic toward Kyra, the pilot, okay? Mm-hmm. And he realizes in the moment when he's trying to profess some very awkwardly, okay? And we were there. We were teenagers once.
We were all kids once.
He realizes in the midst of that, oh my goodness, she actually sees me like maybe like she feels like he could tell that she felt like she was being forced into a situation. And he backed up from that, and that's, for somebody with his upbringing, his station, to have that much awareness at that moment, I felt was like, okay, I like this kid. I think he's better than that. And where does that compassion come from? Where does that empathy come from? And I felt like he showed that a lot. And we'll talk about later relationships as well, like with Kat, for example.
Yeah.
I felt like he has a ton of. This is not a guy I expect to blow up a sun and kill millions of people. This is a guy who seems to want to do right. He doesn't want to be one of those torturer priests, because he's a decent person. He hates the idea of what his father wants him to become. Am I getting him wrong there?
Oh, no. And I think that all comes from Tor Gibson. That's why he wants to follow in those footsteps and be an academic, I think.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel. And that gets to I think there's a question here. Where does that come from? Where does empathy come from? Compassion, of course, is acting on empathy. But I expect that to be a theme. And when we get to the place where we see why he blows up a sun and kills, I'm imagining it's the Cielson has something to do with, it's their son, or they're the millions of people that he kills or whatever. But even the Cielson in this book, he's one of the few characters who just doesn't automatically see them as monsters. There's that his empathy is that great that he is capable of. Yes, part of it is intellectual curiosity. It's wanting to, just expand his knowledge, but it's also he's compassionate where other people just see a monster, you know.
Yeah.
And that
But the
happens.
shades of meaning, the way that Ruocchio parses and peels the onion, this guy comes from a very authoritarian culture.
Right.
It's very conservative, very authoritarian, very Roman, very rigid, very class structured. I mean, you know, you look at the Russians, the way there's the aristocracy and there's the complete bottom of the line peasant, and they've never had a middle class. The structure of this is so authoritarian, but because you're seeing it through this empathetic character, it goes down like butter in many ways. And so you got to kind of stop yourself and go, wait a minute, this is horribly eugenic. This is, you know, incredibly, the way he weaves it together, it all sits on that viewpoint. And here you have a compassionate character in the middle of this, and it makes you stop questioning these things that you really ought to be questioning. It's brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so much of this empathy that you're rightfully picking up, Dr. Chase, right from the very beginning, is this idealist starting his journey, is straight from Tor Gibson. It's straight from the classical idea of a Grecian education, where there is the physical and there is the mental. And he wants to follow in the footsteps of these stories. Again, how do stories define us and how do stories make us? And these heroes he's read, Siddhartha, and then I can't remember something the red that goes to and meets the Urchani, Sinian the red, that meets the Urchani and brings them into, you know, conclave with the human empire. He wants to follow those footsteps. He wants to understand. He wants to reach out. He wants to say we shouldn't just have years and years and years of war. If we could communicate, if I could follow in the footsteps that I've heard from these stories and these legends, maybe there's a chance to change the status quo. And I think that all stems from that classic education.
And story.
And story, which is part of the classic
the
education.
mythic heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
And that hits on another thing. I mean, Siddhartha.
No,
Look
let's
at all
talk
the
about
things
that.
That one collection of syllables bounces off. Drives me freaking crazy because the number of things that I recognize means how many millions of things I missed with this man's work.
Yes. Siddhartha. I'm sure you picked that up, Dr. Chase.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
we're looking at thousands and thousands of years into our future, and yet these stories, these legends, these ideals that we base entire faith-based structures on still persevere, even though they've become a bit twisted. The Arthurian legend has become twisted into Siddhartha's journey to enlightenment.
Yeah,
So
El
it's
Cid, Siddhartha. It's all
It's
until
all
you go, I'm never going to untangle this. And he puts
Yes.
Godadin on the first page.
Yeah.
The Godadin is on the first freaking page. And it's like all those parallels shooting off. It just drives you nuts. It was so much fun. Because I said I don't get thrown out of my depth too often. And it's really fun.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I want to give a chance to Dylan and or Jacob here. And if you guys want to react to any of this, you're not anti-Hadrian, right? I mean,
No. I'm not anti-Hadrian at all. I think a lot of the things that I saw in Crispin was that, yes, there's a lot of growing to do. And yeah, Hadrian does have the capacity to practice empathy with the pilot that he, he practices empathy a lot in the book. But I really enjoyed the experience of seeing that Hadrian and Crispin are both just so clearly jealous of each other. And I think I saw that kind of growth curve that was coming for Crispin, and seeing my own values validated in the Lesser Devil kind of made me happy. So I love Crispin. That's not to say that Hadrian's unlikable by any means.
right.
I think that there are just decisions that Hadrian makes that makes me go, no, I wouldn't do that. But maybe because I'm not as strong as you are. And it makes me question myself, because there are just so many experiences in life that Hadrian is forced to go through, that if I were put in the same situation, I don't think I would be strong enough to make the decisions that he does.
Yeah. Okay. Dylan, you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, so just circling back to Crispin, my thing was just he's misunderstood. Hadrian has his own beliefs, and this is Hadrian telling us his story.
That's
We're not
right.
getting Crispin's side of things. And then I really love your point of where does all this empathy for Hadrian, that Hadrian has come from? And is just his love for literature, which is a really cool point. Like as John mentioned, like this is his Samuel Tarly, like reading about the accomplishments of better men, and then going and trying to do that himself, being more idyllic. Really cool.
Okay. And someone pointed out in the chat there's a certain novella that is from Crispin's perspective that
Lesser Devil.
I obviously have to read that one.
I would read Lesser Devil before book 2.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I will do that then, and we'll have to include that in our next chat.
Absolutely.
Have you all
I
read?
don't think it really gives you.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I don't think it adds any context to book 2. I think
It doesn't,
it's
just
it's technically
chronologically.
book 1.5.
Yeah, chronologically, it's where it falls. It doesn't really give you any context for book 2, but you get to see a little Crispin love there.
That's my assignment now from Jacob
Yeah.
and Dylan is to learn some Crispin love.
Get the Crispin love, yeah.
Okay. I do wonder, before we move on to the next part of the story, Imesh, I do want to ask you guys, does Lady Liliana love her son?
Yes.
Is that an act of love when she rescues him and sends him away? Or is she just trying to stick it to Alistair? Or is it both? I don't know. Anyone?
Both, but maybe just trying to redeem herself of being an absent mother for such a long period of time.
Okay.
You do kind of get the sense that there's like some guilt mixed up in there.
Massive. Well, also, what Hadrian went through on Emsh, he was protecting his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was known that she helped him, I gather it was going to be a long, hard fall. And these people are not terribly forgiving of breaking class barriers or doing, stepping outside of the societal role laid out for them. So even though she was powerfully connected, it might have caused her a great deal of trouble. So I think she genuinely wanted to help him, but I think she didn't think outside the bounds of writing her stories as to what could have gone wrong with the way she sent him off. She was a bit naive.
Yeah.
Privileged.
Privileged.
We
Yes.
believe that engaging in stories and makes you a better person. In fact, Hadrian is evidence of that. Maybe some of his empathy and compassion come from his engagement with stories, but she is someone who tells stories herself and seems to be lost in that. And perhaps there is a danger there that you can be lost in the stories and forget about the real people, perhaps.
Yes. Yes. And we've seen that how many times? I mean, so many favorite storytellers of one kind or another we find out are, have feet of clay when it comes to being a human sometimes, at times. An artist's journey sometimes draws people that want to experience it all, even to their own detriment, and put that into their art. And I think Hadrian's mother is much like that. But I do think she loves her son. I do think she wants to make this grand, dramatic gesture at the end and stick it to Alistair a little bit, all at one time.
There's also the huge hallmark of this Chosen One story, and that is that you have to alienate the character from family to really dig into them growing on their own 2 feet and challenging and questioning all of the values they were handed. And Ruocchio did that, giving this kid 2 parents. Wasn't the orphan, wasn't the this, wasn't the that. Gave the kid 2 parents, and they were not perfect. So he achieved the same framing of the alienated child without doing it the way traditionally most Chosen One stories begin. So I admire that.
There's another, and that Daniel's comment is funny, but also brings up, she's from this social class where there's this expectation that the rest of the world exists for
She is quite the hedonist.
Their pleasure or their convenience or their control. And I do prefer her in many ways over Alistair, but I think she's another facet of that privilege that we see. And maybe if, Hadrian getting knocked around on Imesh is certainly a way in which he gets humbled. It's a very Dickensian narrative at this point when he goes to Imesh, and he's not a little child. He's not exactly Oliver Twist, but he goes through some pretty rough stuff there and makes, I thought, a beautiful relationship with Kat. Kat was just a warm spot in all of that horror, I felt. Just a wonderful character. Of course, he loses her tragically as well. But let's go to Imesh, guys. Are we ready to go to Imesh?
Yes.
All right. The gravity's a little bit, whoops. Okay. There's
Imesh.
Yeah.
Fireworks.
Mesh, yay.
The gravity is a little bit heavier here at Amesh. It's you may want to bring your sunscreen and your swimsuit. I don't know if you want to swim there or not, but a lot of themes come out, I thought, really beautifully in Amesh. I did mention the Dickensian thing, but there's also a situation of just the exploitation and the social hierarchy, and not just of humans, but you have a species that's native to this planet that is brutally exploited. And that brings up also, just the human assumption of superiority. We've gone out of our Earth and we've encountered other species, and we're treating other species much the way we treated species here on our own planet, which apparently we destroyed. So, yeah, doesn't seem like we learned a whole lot there going out into space, but.
Well, the actual thing was he quotes that there were 20-something species that they've run across.
Yeah.
And all of them have come to a bad end. They've either been enslaved or wiped out, and none of them were treated as intellectually equal to human beings. Even in their own sphere, they're not given credit for what they are. So you really see the brutal aspects of the human condition and all of the flaws of our own history magnified on Emsh. It's like humanity has not grown up.
Brian. Yeah, it would take a long time to get there from old Earth, I'm sure.
Yeah. But humanity has not grown up, and so much so that we're still, having the bread and circuses and the games and everything. It's
and still considering ourselves the most supreme being in the universe.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like,
absolutely.
Well, this makes sense. So sorry to interrupt, but Mick Garfield is mentioning the Kingkiller Chronicles, of course, was the Name of the Wind being the first one, which is also very Dickensian.
Yeah.
So that makes sense if that was an influence on this.
Actually, I think Cat was the
Not supposed to be
publisher.
in.
Yeah, the publisher made him add Cat because they wanted it to be more like Name of the Wind because it was so popular at the time.
No kidding.
Yeah, so that was all of that relationship was an add-on that Christopher had to add in.
Okay, well, good move because I loved Cat.
I love Cat. I love Cat too. Yeah.
And Jacob or Dylan, thoughts on Cat or Imesh, whatever you want.
I actually really, at first, wasn't quite sure what we were doing with Cat. It felt like a real halt to the momentum, and then I kind of felt that was the purpose of it. Cat just felt like such like you said, a warm spot, and I think was that to Hadrian too, and to have that ripped away just felt like that nagging, horrible reminder, just like the pilot that, the lifestyle that you have and the lifestyle that you were perhaps destined for does not have happy tidings in your future. You are meant to live a very long time, and to settle down and have a life with this commoner is just not something that is in the cards for you. And potentially something like settling down at all is not in the cards for you. And it just, I could see why that must be there in the beginning of the story to kind of add that complex to Hadrian of the fear of what a relationship can do to his life.
Plus the fact that his genetics are such that he was always going to outlive her,
Yeah.
but also it was the huge bridging of class barriers.
Yes.
This was the first time he really connected with anyone who was that far, quote, below his station.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
saw them as
yes.
a human being.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it was a necessary step. The editor was smart to put them there. I don't care about the Name of the Wind, though it did feel a bit Name of the Windy. I'm going, oh, here's this section. Where's... But I think she was a necessary moment for him to connect with somebody on a human level who was not from his background and was, in fact, the total polar opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Dylan, your thoughts on Cat, if you like, or the Imesh part of the story?
Nothing really new to add. Like for me, it was like Janny said, it's Hadrian getting the opportunity to meet someone lower on the totem pole than he's really spent time around. And that was like this whole book was just Hadrian just meeting people that he hasn't met yet and learning more perspective. So then when he goes into the later books and he's always around like the higher up people, he will look at someone down the street and you'll see him seeing Cat in that person or someone.
Yes. I loved that he didn't just forget her, that she's brought up many times when he's having feelings about Valka, or when he's with Aeneas. Kat comes into his mind many times, or when he goes back to that warehouse where they went to steal fish together. He remembers her. So it wasn't just something that was there for a device. In other words, she's a breathing character who had a big impact on him. So I thought that was a really nice touch in there.
Completely, and I so agree with Janny on this, and you, Philip. I'm glad it's in there, because him wanting to, like I said before, ascend to the level of these great heroes that he's read about. I find this time on Amesh is a little bit of a mirror to Siddhartha's journey. You have an aristocrat that's left left the ruling class and is out here learning what do people have to do to survive? What's really going on? Finding love, losing love, finding that there is beauty in the tragedy of losing love, finding love that you can possibly love again, moving on, picking that even though the tragedy is going to come your way. There's so much here thematically that I think absolutely works with what's going on, all the breadcrumbs that are being dropped.
Yeah. I also, from the early parts, appreciated the symbolism of his thumb ring. That was his identity, in a way, was wrapped up in this, and the initial loss of it was something he had to retrieve it, and he got it back from the docks there, from the dock workers, but later discarded it, and that was the result of his interactions with Balian. We have to talk about that. Of course, first though, he gets involved as a Myrmidon in the arena. So let's talk about his time there and his relationships that he forms there with his fellow warriors. Particularly, what's the name of the young man who worked as a sex worker?
Switch.
Yes, Switch. That turned out to be a really great relationship as well, I felt. And one, again, Hadrian's background as an aristocrat, as one of the elite, it does kind of get in the way of that, or there are moments where that's an issue, particularly given how exploited Switch had been by those people. Any thoughts on the gladiator part of this on Imesh as Hadrian has to fight for survival?
There was a love letter to Gladiator, the movie, in there too.
Oh yeah,
the love letters to all of the TV, the movies, the books. I loved it. There were so many. It drove me crazy because I said I'm not catching them all. I can't possibly catch them all.
I think this was the first,
and I enjoyed it for the love letter that it was. I loved it.
I think this was the first section of the book that I still have an exact picture in my head of what it looked like when Hadrian was fighting in the Colosseum, and he had the white tall grass that he's talking about. And maybe it's just for me from a film perspective, but this was the part of the book where it started to feel like Christopher was spending a lot of time building his environments, and I really appreciated that, with each chapter really being a scene where you're in one set location and he takes the time to kind of build the environment around these characters and let his characters inhabit it, and then the scene plays out and we move to a different location.
Jacob, you and John blew my freaking mind when you interviewed Christopher Ruocchio and he said he was not a visual writer, that he could not visualize, and I'm going, what?
How? I don't know how. I felt bad. I asked him that question like 3 times, and he said, I feel like I'm getting repetitive. And I was like, because it makes no sense to me how you don't see
such a visual,
what you're talking about.
It's every single page paints that stage set.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a grandiosity that you seldom see.
Completely agree. His ability to paint a picture is really, especially for that age, it's just unfair. It was incredible what he was able to do.
Well, it's perfectly fair. Otherwise, we don't have anything to reach for. Come on, guys. You don't want to see every book. No book ever blew my mind or made me want to reach higher. Come on. It's rare to find them when you've been around for a while, and so you cheer when it happens because you go, there's more room to expand here and there's more room to grow.
And
Very
I
true.
thought the Roman influences there were great, and again emphasizing the class divisions, the cruelty of humanity, that the blood sport, all of that. This whole portion I thought fit very well
Yeah.
in terms of those themes that I can see developing that are simmering here the whole time. So that was really brilliant. And of course, Hadrian gets himself into trouble trying to see the Cielsen prisoner that they're going to use as sacrifice for Balian's son's birthday celebration, right? And that's when we first meet a Cielsen. And again, that's a moment of Hadrian being compassionate, of being like, he speaks to this creature and relates to it as a fellow creature. He doesn't see a monster there. So that was a powerful scene, short but powerful, and it leads to big consequences with him losing his freedom, being essentially a captive within the mansion of these aristocrats. Bringing us to the next portion of the story, essentially. Also, where he finally does meet Valka, which I can see already. I mean, he talks that out pretty big right from the get-go. Again, he gives away the game. The way he speaks about Valka right from the beginning is like, you realize, okay, this is going to be important. I'm paying attention right now, right? So thoughts on his relationships with Balian, Aeneas. I forget the son's name. You remember Balian's son's name?
I have no idea.
Okay. Something, he reminds him of Crispin a bit. I remember that. He seems like a decent chap, the son, again, an aristocrat with nothing to worry about except what wine he's going to have with dinner, But of course, Valka. We have to talk about Valka. We cannot leave this until we talk about Valka.
Oh, get used to talking about Valka.
Thoughts?
Valka.
Spill your feelings, guys, on this. Anyone want to start us out with any of these elements?
Well, I love what Janny said about how it just looks back at our history and how it never looks good when one culture encounters another. And I think all the foreshadowing has been set up there, and then you bring in that Cielsen and you see, oh, no wonder, all these other species that we've encountered that has not gone well, and we've hit a huge brick wall. And so I really did love that.
I think Valko was the one moment in the beginning of Hadrian's story where he truly encountered somebody from another culture. Now we're not talking a class division, because she was not at the far end of the polarity spectrum. She's somebody in her own right that has position in her culture and is valued for what she is. So she's definitely not the lower class. But this was the first time he crossed cultures, human cultures.
Yeah.
And it forced him to,
Yeah.
she's constantly looking down on everything that his culture values and constantly undercutting it. And so that was an interesting wrench in perspective to his young mind.
Yeah.
I do think we get, it's been a while, correct me if I'm wrong, I do think we get some information that Dorian, that's right, Valka's culture and where she comes from, there is much less class disparity. Like
Tavros. Yeah, she's Tavros.
Tavros, yeah, Tavrosi. I think there's much less of a gap there, and I think it's very purposeful that you have all those scenes with the Myrmidons in the Colosseum, where I think there's a scene where they're fighting some of the like imperial soldiers or something like that, and they learn that they have shields on and they're kind of cheating, and that kind of helps Hadrian have a little more perspective and be on the other side of things there. And okay, maybe I'm not going to view this Cielsen as just some horrific creature, because maybe I've just been treated as a creature and been cheated in this own fight that should have been fair, but is really just entertainment. And to meet somebody like Valka, where those values are kind of shared, that the wage gap is, or not wage gap, but the class gap is quite disgusting.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because
I haven't. Oh, it's all right, Philip. Keep going.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Hadrian's attracted to her quite obviously from the very beginning. And I think part of the attraction is she is a scientist, a xenologist, Dr. Ondera, right? The xenologist. and that's part of the attraction because he is someone who has intellectual curiosity. He wants to know, he wants to travel, and she represents this romantic idea of that.
Yeah.
But also, I think her very hostility to the way the empire functions, its hierarchy, its violence, everything else, and the fact that he is a barbarian, as well to her. Mm-hmm. He needs to prove himself to her as well, so it's a fascinating relationship right from the get-go.
She's the first woman that he runs into that is his intellectual equal.
Or superior.
Or superior.
Or
yeah.
superior. But yeah, I would say overall, in this book and going forward, the male characters worked better for me than the women characters. But I haven't seen a lot of contributions in the comments from women. So I'm curious if I'm the odd one out that really liked this series. But I will say that the male characters felt more fleshed out to me as people.
Interesting.
The women were well fleshed out. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't resonate with them the same way I did the rest of the cast.
Okay.
That could be a me thing.
Huh. Well,
I wouldn't change a thing. So I'm not saying I was dissatisfied with it. I wouldn't change a thing. I just noticed that emotionally I wasn't as connected to the women at all.
Interesting.
In this series.
I mean, I would say that they're miles and miles better than the women in Book of the New Sun.
Oh. I didn't say I'd change a thing. I just said it was my relationship to the characters. They're not the ones that I connected with the most strongly. And I'd be curious if there are women in the chat, if they felt the same way.
Yeah, please, women in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
my girlfriend's waving to me saying, yes, she completely agrees.
Okay. Masha agrees with you, Janny. And here we have Titan TV agreeing with you, with the exception of Valka. Okay.
Well, Valka has a connection. She's got an implant. So I didn't expect her to be the same. In other words, there was a reason for Valka to be the way she was.
Okay. And we have Shay giving you some agreement here, although he again loves Valka. So there's some Valka fans here.
Yeah, I didn't say I didn't love her. I just said the emotional connection wasn't as strong.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I agree. I am also not a woman, but I agree.
Okay.
Dylan, do you have anything to say or about before?
Character-wise,
I don't want to take your space, my brother.
No. Character-wise, as a series, I did have much bigger buy-in for Hadrian than almost any other character. There's one we get later on, really good, but we only get snippets of him and his conversation as Hadrian. But just being the Hadrian story, I find I don't get as much out of the other characters as I do out of Hadrian.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is natural in a first
person. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
That's Fitz in the Realm of the Elderlings, or Staverian in Book of the New Sun, or Kvothe in The Name of the Wind. And on it goes. I mean, that's natural. Yeah.
The one thing I would say about Valka is intellectually superior, all the things we pointed out, but also keeping in line with that theme of how story builds us and makes us and defines us. He's a barbarian. He's meeting a heretic. After this war with the machines.
A cyborg.
Yes, after this war with the machines, shades of Herbert and others, he's meeting a heretic and a culture that doesn't necessarily believe this in their intellectual thinking, in their ideas of faith. So we're starting to see where people come from. We're starting to see differences there. We're starting to see how ideas of faith build that story for us that define our reality.
Yeah, well said. All right. So anything else on Imesh? I feel like there's a lot that happens there after Hadrian's being captive. Dylan, was there something you wanted to comment on there?
Are we going to move on to the Chantry next?
Let's do it.
Well, I want to throw in something here, and that is that
go for it.
One thing that was level all across the playing field was that all of the upper classes are involved with some form of eugenics.
Yes.
Yeah.
That temptation to alter, improve, enhance, stretch the boundaries, all of the upper class. I didn't see any exceptions to that.
Yeah.
at least on the human side.
Yeah. 100%.
Just an observation.
Oh, it's so true. What does it mean to be human? It is morphed and stretched so many times through the series.
And I like
Absolutely.
that exploration
Oh,
because
me too.
they're not going to stop. You know, we can see the beginnings of it shaping in our society. They're not going to put on the brakes for anything.
Nope.
And we do meet a bunch of more characters here. Of course, the big event that happens on Imesh eventually is the arrival of the Cielsen. And not only that, but you also have the people from where they're from, Lady Kalima and her Aloran, who is probably my favorite character.
Right out of Tolkien. That's the name for Gandalf.
It's Gandalf's name, I
In
know.
Cinder. So
Yeah.
it's like it's like, where did that come
Yeah,
from?
this is
Why
like
is it there? And I
Gandalf
kept
with a
waiting
sword.
to see where's the parallel to this character in the series. I think it was just he flips
Well,
these
he
little
is-
coins in there, and it's like smack.
He is the Maeskilo swordmaster of the Fire School, and if you know your Gandalf, you know that the Fire School is significant, right? But
He's just name dropping on that one
probably.
Yeah.
But I loved
in
Aloran.
a good way. In a good
Oh,
way,
like,
yeah.
really
Great
good.
character.
Great character. But the politics here too, of course, with Hadrian trying to get himself off the planet, and also conveniently with Valka. But you know, he's trying to, of course, the whole part where he is the interpreter as they're torturing the Cielsen,
Yeah.
and you know his whole role in that. I mean, that's
That was a very,
Big.
very wrenching scene.
big setup
Yes.
stuff. I feel.
But
That-
you know what? The lengths that he will go to escape being a slave to his genes, because he was essentially a slave to his genetics. That's
they
why
wanted
he was being
his
held.
genes. Yeah.
So you know, how deep do you dig to escape that? And that scene with the Cielsen was part of it.
Okay, so guys, thoughts on the whole Hadrian being the interpreter, the torturing of the Cielsen, all of that stuff. Let's go to town here. Not like
I think that was a defining moment for that character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he
Yeah.
really saw what he was running from the chancery. He was not. He knew he was running from that, but it was intellectual. At that point, he became the enemy of that way of thought right there, and it was visceral, and it was horrific, and it was wrenching, and it was tough to read. It was a perfectly crafted scene.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not one I want to reread again, but it was a perfectly crafted scene.
Yeah. With the Cielsen captain, with whom he forms. The tragedy of this is, of course, he feels for what was the name of the captain who gets tortured horribly?
Is it
by the-
Uvenari?
Uvenari. Thank you, Jacob. That was such a fascinating relationship to me.
Yeah.
It's so brilliantly portrayed because here you have Hadrian feeling for Uvenari, wants to help, genuinely gets them to surrender, which has never been done before. The Cielsen have never surrendered. He arranges this and then feels this incredible guilt when what happens, when the Chantry tortures him and or it because they're non-binary. But I mean, it was such a gut-wrenching thing because he didn't want to be part of it, but he gets dragged into it, and he becoming the interpreter becomes part of it, and the whole plan to honor Uvenari's request to end
The broken promises.
just
Yes.
powerful stuff. And then fighting for his life against Uvenari in that scene when Uvenari is trying to kill Hadrian, or is Uvenari trying to kill Hadrian or get Hadrian to kill them,
him
right?
in some type of honorific way that yes.
Right. So thoughts, go to town.
Well, it's your first look at the opacity of the culture
Mm-hmm.
that you really don't understand yet.
True. Very true.
So I can't say any more because we're not going to spoil Philip. But it's an opaque culture at this point.
Absolutely.
So you can't see the dynamics of what's in play in that scene until you have more perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of his best work is there in that book, though, with the just deciphering the mannerisms of Uvenari while they're having that conversation in the scene where Hadrian is kind of being the interpreter and feeding maybe like a third of the correct information to the people that
Right.
speak his language and having his own private conversation with Uvenari. That just deciphering that the Cielsen don't have a word for yes and they just grunt, or that they shake their heads the opposite ways that we do to signify yes and no. And
That's
the
so
world building
very,
done.
very cross-cultural, though, because if you've ever traveled into cultures that are not Western, wars start because gestures mean something totally opposite.
Yeah.
And I've learned some incredible things. I mean, I could give you anecdotes where literally wars would be started because one culture was trying to make a connection and the other culture did not understand what it was, even just between two people.
Yeah.
And so that was so very real. There's so many facets to this series that just strike the
Yes.
gong.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the reason that why Hadrian is so careful about what information that he does give in his translations. Is he knows that that's possible, and he's hoping that there is a path to some sort of truce between the Cielsen and the humans here, and he wants to be that bridge. But he knows that from what he understands from the Cielsen language and from how much he doesn't understand when he immediately starts to talk to Uvenari and realizes how out of depth that he is just by how much he's been able to learn from Tor Gibson, that it's going to be a very, very tricky negotiation.
We've met the Dark Lord, and it is
Yeah.
the Chantry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Hadrian is so right that it's not even about religion; it's about control. You know.
But there's so many layers going on there, right? Like he has been grown up in the Chantry. So much that you're the second son. The father wants him to go in and be a figure high up in the Chantry. Now he's met Vulca, a heretic that believes something entirely different. Now the heretic in this situation is showing more honor of how to handle this and how to respect the past and respect other cultures that comes in line with his own ideology and his own goals to make a change in his world, that he's starting to, his head as a young man's being pulled all these different ways, right? And it's so well done.
It was said in a documentary about story where they talked about the function of story in cultures. If you know their stories, you won't start a war.
Wow.
And here he is interpreting for this culture, this captive, where he does not know their stories at all. So the reference points are not there.
Also, by the way, Samuel Ruocchio does a stellar job of narrating all of this.
I bet.
The Cielsen voices
Yeah.
and everything. It's incredible. It's great
Yeah.
stuff.
But you could start to see these first steps of what he's taken to get to that person at the end that's narrating it. Because how hard is it? Jacob, you're there. Dylan, you're there. You're a young person with ideas and ideals, and you're passionate and you want to change the world. And then you start to see how the world is constructed and built, and how it's going to come against you, and how it's going to be so hard to push through and make your mark and make a change. And that's all the things that he's butting up against right here. It's
The elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is you want to change the world and make it better, but no one of us has the perspective to do it without harming something else. None of us have it. So this huge ideal of one person can change the world or remake it into their image is just off the charts, impossible to encompass as a young person or even an old person. As you get old, you realize that. But when you're young and idealistic and have all that energy, you can't see that.
Yep.
And in the process of trying to save the world,
You destroy
a lot.
the greater part of it.
Right. Because you think you're special. You think you're able. Yeah.
Well, on the other hand, though, I mean, there's the vision of youth, the idealism of youth that
We have to have it.
drives change.
It's also the perpetual conundrum. If you say, I don't have enough knowledge to make a choice, you never make a choice. You have to go from where you are. That's how you learn.
Because as Hadrian says, and others begin to believe in what he's saying when they're at that council. And the woman who's basically in charge, she's the imperial representative there, Smythe. Here's what Hadrian says about or even the Cielsen hear him, and they're like, "Yeah, you're right. We've been fighting this war, it's basically been handed off to us by previous generations. And I love, by the way, that Ruocchio doesn't info dump or anything like that about the whole like beginnings of this. And Hadrian just says, no, we're going to start with my story here, you know. And he's in the midst of this war that's been going on for generations and generations. And a lot of people hear Hadrian's idealism, and it's contagious, you know.
It is, yeah.
It's contagious because we don't have to do it the old way. We're in these ruts. We could do something different now, you know. And why don't we talk instead, right? Why don't we have some diplomacy? And of course, he has to overcome these people in the Chantry who don't even acknowledge that the other side is in any way, shape, or form anything other than a monster, right?
Yeah, completely.
So interesting stuff. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. What do you guys want to bring up? We have a little bit of time left for you guys to bring up anything. We didn't bring up everything we could have talked about, but anything you guys want to talk about that we missed, or you want to circle back to anything? Any final points you want to make?
I'll bring up one other thing towards the end before he becomes the translator or anything, and that is when he touches that wall. And he starts to realize at that moment, oh, there's more worlds than are dreamt of in your reality. Oh, there's more to the space and time. There's more levels than this dimension or this physical plane, or there's something else going on here. Shades of Lovecraft, shades of all these things. Love it. It was at that point when that moment happened for me, I was like, this is gonna be a favorite for me.
The quiet.
Yes.
So this is something that, you know, we humans think we're at the top of the food chain. We're the big dude on the block. We get to call the shots. And the idea that this ruin could have been built by something that existed
Much bigger.
Millennia.
Much bigger.
Much bigger. Did you guys catch the echo to the beginning of the book when Hadrian has that moment where he sees what's going on in the arena and he goes, this is wrong? And he has that silence, that moment of silence that hits him and he doesn't know what it means. And then you get the echo of that in that ruin.
Right.
I missed that on the first time out. I forgot that little detail there, but on the reread, it stood out like a stick in the eye.
Wow. Yeah.
Where he had a moment where there was silence in his mind because he had compassion for the killing, that this was wrong. So yeah, watch for it. I think that there's a snowball being built, and I think we're going to see, at least those of us who are rereading, are going to see more of the pieces going together.
Very
But
cool.
yeah, it was bookended by that moment when he's a child at the arena.
Nice.
But that's a big theme, I feel, that is being set up here with the quiet, with the idea that we are not what we think we are, that there are bigger things than we are. This universe is much more vast than we are. And we have just the barest understanding of what's out there. And I love that humbling moment. And that's why I feel like Hadrian feels that bond with Valka, because she gets that too, right?
Yes, completely.
So anything else that you guys want to bring up before we call it a night or a day for Dylan?
True. I would love to hear from you, Philip. Like, are there things that you're hoping to see in book 2? Are there things that you're excited for?
You're just starting out. Like,
come on, I want Aloran to have a lightsaber fight with somebody. He has those are lightsabers essentially, right? That he has.
High matter
close
swords.
enough. Yeah.
High matter sword. Okay, lightsabers. I love that there are lightsabers here, and I love Aloran as a character. I want more Aloran, and I hope I get that. But if I don't, I'm still in. You know. But yeah, no, I'm so looking forward to seeing how Christopher Ruocchio develops these themes, these big picture things, and Hadrian, with whom I have a great deal of sympathy already. I feel very connected to this character. And I'm dying to find out how he goes from this young person who is escaping Imesh, and I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he ever does get married to poor Aeneas, who's probably still pining away. Or not. Maybe she gets over him. But I'm very, very excited to see how things develop. And
Well,
he
Philip,
goes.
word of caution going into Howling Dark: don't read it at bedtime.
Ooh,
You will have dreams like you cannot freaking believe.
How soon are you reading Howling Dark? Like, how often are you reading these, Dr. Chase?
I'm gonna do one a month. One a month.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're getting
Okay.
together
Perfect.
in one more month, everybody.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So thank you guys in the chat. You guys are wonderful. Speaking of wonderful people in the chat, thank you so much, Chris Longson, for your generosity. That's really wonderful. And a secret about the text. As long as it's not a spoiler, we definitely would.
Yeah.
Sure. For sure. Please share away. And a question about I am going to read, there we go.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
The novellas and short stories. I guess I've been told by the Crispin party here,
Yeah.
AKA Dylan and Jacob, that I have to read the Crispin novella, which is, what was it called again, guys?
Lesser
The
Devil.
Lesser
The
Devil.
Lesser Devil. Okay, and there's a nice pun right there. I get it. He's the Lesser Devil. I got it. Okay.
I think there are many. There's a short story that goes between, or not short story. There's a novella that goes between each book, right? I've only read The
Not
Lesser
each
Devil.
book. Not each book.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to hand Dylan a medal because what is it? The middle of the night for you, or very, very,
Yeah,
very
what
early
time
in
is
the
it there,
morning?
Dylan?
It's early in the morning
it's
for you.
just hit midday.
So
Okay.
it's midday.
all right.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem. Midday. Okay, so we've got
Yes.
The
Those are the
complete
three,
set?
Dr. Chase.
and the Uman. Yes. Okay. Yes. Very good.
Yeah,
We didn't
the
talk
King.
about them. I felt terrible for the Uman and all of this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they were. That was sad. The King Crusoe right below that. Those are the three novellas.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Lesser Devil, Queen Amid Ashes, and Dregs of Empire. All right. I think I got all of them on audiobook when they were on sale, so I felt very clever for that. Even the novellas. Awesome. And KC is also all right. Okay, fine. Very good. And I will be sure to read everything because I'm loving this. Thank you for being so awesome and joining me on this and not spoiling anything and getting me more excited for the rest of the series. You've all been brilliant. I appreciate you so much. And again, thank you everyone in the chat. Last word to any of you guys, or anyone want to say anything in parting?
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it was
Absolutely.
amazing. What an
It's
amazing
been a
time.
delight.
All right. We'll be back in about a month, everybody. But until next time. Oh, I gotta hit end stream again. Okay.